This is A Course in Miracles, Preface, What it says. Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. This is how A Course in Miracles begins. It makes a fundamental distinction between the real and the unreal, between knowledge and perception. Knowledge is truth under one law, the law of love, or God. Truth is unalterable, eternal, and unambiguous. It can be unrecognized, but it cannot be changed. It applies to everything that God created, and only what He created is real. It is beyond learning because it is beyond time and process. It has no opposite, no beginning, and no end. It merely is. The world of perception, on the other hand, is the world of time, of change, of beginnings and endings. It is based on interpretation, not on facts. It is the world of birth and death, founded on the belief in scarcity, loss, separation, and death. It is learned rather than given, selective in its perceptual emphases, unstable in its functioning, and inaccurate in its interpretations. From knowledge and perception, respectively, two distinct thought systems arise which are opposite in every respect. In the realm of knowledge, no thoughts exist apart from God, because God and His creation share one will. The world of perception, however, is made by the belief in opposites and separate wills, in perceptual conflict with each other and with God. What perception sees and hears appears to be real because it permits into awareness only what conforms to the wishes of the perceiver. This leads to a world of illusions, a world which needs constant defense precisely because it is not real. When you have been caught in the world of perception, you are caught in a dream. You cannot escape without help, because everything your senses show merely witnesses to the reality of the dream. God has provided the answer, the only way out, the true helper. It is the function of His voice, His Holy Spirit, to mediate between the two worlds. He can do this because, while on one hand He knows the truth, on the other He also recognizes our illusions, but without believing in them. It is the Holy Spirit's goal to help us escape from the dream world by teaching us how to reverse our thinking and unlearn our mistakes. Forgiveness is the Holy Spirit's great learning aid in bringing this thought reversal about. However, the Course has its own definition of what forgiveness really is, just as it defines the world in its own way. The world we see merely reflects our own internal frame of reference, the dominant ideas, wishes, and emotions in our minds. Projection makes perception. Text, page 445. We look inside first, decide the kind of world we want to see, and then project that world outside, making it the truth as we see it. We make it true by our interpretations of what it is we are seeing. If we are using perception to justify our own mistakes, our anger, our impulses to attack, our lack of love in whatever form it may take, we will see a world of evil, destruction, malice, envy, and despair. All this we must learn to forgive, not because we are being good and charitable, but because what we are seeing is not true. We have distorted the world by our twisted defenses and are therefore seeing what is not there. As we learn to recognize our perceptual errors, we also learn to look past them or forgive. At the same time, we are forgiving ourselves, looking past our distorted self-concepts to the self that God created in us and as us. Sin is defined as lack of love. Text, page 11. Since love is all there is, sin in the sight of the Holy Spirit is a mistake to be corrected rather than an evil to be punished. Our sense of inadequacy, weakness, and incompletion comes from the strong investment in the scarcity principle that governs the whole world of illusions. From that point of view, we seek in others what we feel is wanting in ourselves. We love another in order to get something ourselves. That, in fact, is what passes for love in the dream world. There can be no greater mistake than that, for love is incapable of asking for anything. Only minds can really join, and whom God has joined, no man can put asunder. Text, page 356. It is, however, only at the level of Christ mind that true union is possible, and has in fact never been lost. The little I seeks to enhance itself by external approval, external possessions, and external love. The self that God created, needs nothing. It is forever complete, safe, loved, and loving. It seeks to share rather than to get, to extend rather than project. It has no needs and wants to join with others out of their mutual awareness of abundance. The special relationships of the world are destructive, selfish, and childishly egocentric. Yet, if given to the Holy Spirit, these relationships can become the holiest things on earth, the miracles that point the way to the return to heaven. The world uses its special relationships as a final weapon of exclusion and a demonstration of separateness. The Holy Spirit transforms them into perfect lessons in forgiveness and in awakening from the dream. Each one is an opportunity to let perceptions be healed and errors corrected. Each one is another chance to forgive oneself by forgiving the other. And each one becomes still another invitation to the Holy Spirit and to the remembrance of God. Perception is a function of the body and therefore represents a limit on awareness. Perception sees through the body's eyes and hears through the body's ears. It evokes the limited responses which the body makes. The body appears to be largely self-motivated and independent, yet it actually responds only to the intentions of the mind. If the mind wants to use it for attack in any form, it becomes prey to sickness, age, and decay. If the mind accepts the Holy Spirit's purpose for it instead, it becomes a useful way of communicating with others, invulnerable as long as it is needed, and to be gently laid by when its use is over. Of itself is neutral, as is everything in the world of perception. Whether it is used for the goals of the ego or the Holy Spirit depends entirely on what the mind wants. The opposite of seeing through the body's eyes is the vision of Christ, which reflects strength rather than weakness, unity rather than separation, and love rather than fear. The opposite of hearing through the body's ears is communication through the voice for God, the Holy Spirit, which abides in each of us. His voice seems distant and difficult to hear because the ego, which speaks for the little separated self, seems to be much louder. This is actually reversed. The Holy Spirit speaks with the unmistakable clarity and overwhelming appeal. No one who does not choose to identify with the body could possibly be deaf to his messages of release and hope, nor could he fail to accept joyously the vision of Christ in glad exchange for his miserable picture of himself. Christ's vision is the Holy Spirit's gift, God's alternative to the illusion of separation and to the belief in the reality of sin, guilt, and death. It is the one correction for all errors of perception, the reconciliation of the seeming opposites on which this world is based. Its kindly light shows all things from another point of view, reflecting the thought system that arises from knowledge, and making return to God not only possible, but inevitable. What was regarded as injustices done to one by someone else now becomes a call for help and for union. Sin, sickness, and attack are seen as misperceptions, calling for remedy through gentleness and love. Defenses are laid down because where there is no attack, there is no need for them. Our brothers' needs become our own because they are taking the journey with us as we go to God. Without us, they would lose their way. Without them, we could never find our own. Forgiveness is unknown in heaven, where the need for it would be inconceivable. However, in this world, forgiveness is a necessary correction for all the mistakes that we have made. To offer forgiveness is the only way for us to have it, for it reflects the law of heaven that giving and receiving are the same. Heaven is the natural state of all the sons of God as He created them. Such is their reality forever. It has not changed because it has been forgotten. Forgiveness is the means by which we will remember. Through forgiveness, the thinking of the world is reversed. The forgiven world becomes the gate of heaven, because by its mercy we can at last forgive ourselves. Holding no one prisoner to guilt, we become free. Acknowledging Christ in all our brothers, we recognize His presence in ourselves. Forgetting all our misperceptions and with nothing from the past to hold us back, we can remember God. Beyond this, learning cannot go. When we are ready, God Himself will take the final step in our return to Him. So this section of what it says in the preface, it's basically a summary of the entire book, which is quite hard to do, but it has a lot of the main principles about the point that it's reversing our thought system, So I'll just point out a few things which I think are significant. One is it makes a fundamental distinction between the real and the unreal, between knowledge and perception, and how the world of perception is the world of time, of change, of beginnings and endings. It's basically the dual experience. And knowledge is truth, the law of love, or God, that it's eternal, it's unambiguous, it just is. And to me, the truth points to the non-dual experience, realizing that we are the whole. And I think that's such a big part of the undoing of the mind, is letting go of our attachment to our own perceptions and perceiving our perceptions as truth or fact. And it goes into several paragraphs about how basically perception is dreaming. When we're completely in the world of perception, it's like we're completely dreaming, we're asleep. And that everything that our senses that we experience through our eyes, through our ears, through our body, it's actually just reflecting what's in our mind. David Hofmeister, who is a great teacher of A Course in Miracles, has said that the eyes are actually projectors and the ears are actually speakers. And basically what that means is that everything that we're hearing, everything that we're witnessing through our eyes, through all of our senses, it's not objective fact. It's actually, we're picking up and we're perceiving and interpreting all that is in our minds. So if you ever notice that you're having a bad day, you're not feeling so good, then you tend to hear and see things that piss you off even more. And on the days where you're like just in this state of joy, where you're like, wow, life is beautiful, then you end up seeing all these reflections of beauty. And so it's just turning it around. Instead of from the outside in, it goes from the inside out. And that everything that we're witnessing is actually just the opportunity to see how we're perceiving, and knowing that we have the ability to change that we can choose to see through love and forgiveness, or we can choose to see through eyes of guilt. And then sin is defined as lack of love. Since love is all there is, sin in the sight of the Holy Spirit is a mistake to be corrected rather than an evil to be punished. And if you grew up in any particular religion, like I did, I associated sin with guilt. Like you're supposed to feel bad because you did something wrong. And that guilt is basically a form of punishment, like a self-punishment, and that's a good thing. And in this thought system, through this teaching, it's actually, the error is that you're choosing to feel guilty or choosing to feel anything which is lack of love, whether that's anger or sadness or just feeling frustrated, whatever thing that you're feeling that isn't love. If you're not experiencing love, that's what sin is. So it's not about feeling bad at all. It's actually correcting where your mind is, where your awareness is, and bringing it back to forgiveness, and forgiveness leading to then an experience of freedom and love. So we're not meant to feel guilty. Sin is just pointing out where we're lacking love. So it's also not saying don't feel upset or angry. It's just recognize that it's indicating that you can point back to love. And the path to that is what this book basically is. It's basically an undoing of all of these layers of guilt that we've put on ourselves, thinking that that's what we're supposed to do. But it's actually about returning back to our original innocence and not focusing on the original sin. And I'm looking forward to getting more in depth about all of these topics. Only minds can really join, and that the special relationships of the world, it says that they're destructive, selfish, and childishly egocentric. Yet, if given to the Holy Spirit, these relationships can become the holiest things on earth, the miracles that point the way to the return to heaven. And to me, this is so exciting because I remember my experience of realizing, oh my gosh, I have special relationships with everything. I have a special relationship with the earth. I have it with food. I have it with my pets. I have it with my now husband. And just realizing how much we want to keep separate. We want to keep it special. Like, this love is special. It's only mine. But really, in keeping it separate, we're actually closing ourselves to the whole, which is even larger and bigger and more pure and whole than what special relationships point to. So it's also a really, to me, it's an exciting process when people can get into these experiences and start to experience the openness that comes through it. And it doesn't mean that it's easy. For me, I had a lot of resistance sometimes to opening up, but every single time that I could allow myself to open up, it was just this liberating experience. And I'm looking forward to experiencing that more and more as well. It says, the opposite of seeing through the body's eyes is the vision of Christ, which reflects strength rather than weakness, and unity rather than separation, and love rather than fear. And the opposite of hearing through the body's ears is communication through the voice for God, which abides in each of us. The last sections here talk about forgiveness, that forgiveness is unknown in heaven, where the need for it would be inconceivable. However, in the world, forgiveness is a necessary correction for the mistakes that we've made. When I first really understood that concept, that, in the forgiven world, there's no need for forgiveness because everything already is forgiven. And realizing, like, I had even an attachment or maybe even a special relationship with the word and the feeling of forgiveness, because it feels like this liberation, this release of guilt or whatever emotions have been stored up. But realizing that when we're in a completely forgiven experience, there isn't that huge release because you're already there. So anyways, this concept to me was pretty mind-blowing. And it also talks about forgiveness as the means which we will remember. Through forgiveness, the thinking of the world is reversed, and holding no one prisoner to guilt, we become free. I just feel so excited. And I think it might be just because we're about to jump into the text, and I can feel that there are other people that maybe are ready for this, that are ready to experience something new, that are tired of feeling guilty all the time, or not even being aware of being guilty, but just feeling bad all the time. And I'm excited for more of us remembering. And again, forgiveness is the means by which we will remember. So every moment, every instance, every situation, every emotion, everything that we forgive, we collectively become closer and closer to being whole and to being completely in love and to be completely with God in our minds and in our hearts. And the last line here, when we are ready, God himself will take the final step in our return to him. And I really love that, because sometimes on a spiritual path, there's all of this pressure to be perfect, to be in perfect alignment, to not have the ups and downs, and to just be so spiritual. But realizing that it's not our responsibility to do it all. We only have to do our part, which is to let go, which is to forgive, to hand it over, to hand over all of those feelings to the Holy Spirit, knowing that it's the surrender, it's the letting go that we have to do. And that's enough, because then through that surrender, through that exhale, that letting go, then that's when God can work through you, can work through us, and takes over. And that takes off all this pressure that we might have, thinking that we have to do so much, when actually we don't really have to do anything at all. It's just actually surrendering to allow the doing to be done through us. So I'm looking forward to getting into the actual text, and I'll see you there. Thank you.